look, I gotta get some. Look at that stuff. Just have it. We gotta get it.
My mom just got a bag of that, actually.
Is it good stuff? Good?
She says it's the best.
Is that the best?
She says it's the best.
If it is, I'll be in Washington, D.C., hopefully in the Oval Office. I'll send for popcorn. Okay?
Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, enjoying the show? It's your guy, the 21st Century, Nate Hausman here, and I'm live streaming on a Saturday, which never happens because I'm usually running around doing errands. But we gotta talk about the enemies of MAGA making a stink over elections and those Jews. Okay, so I've got a whole lot of X posts to go over and review because they explain everything, and I'll be adding my tidbits as well. If you find this content valuable, please give it a like on whatever platform you're watching this on, either YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, or Twitter, X. Share it with people you care about, and give me a follow. Give me, hit the subscribe button and engage with it. So that helps the YouTube algorithm, I know. And I'm doing pretty good on Rumble, so I always get more views on Rumble than YouTube anyway, so I'm not worried about that. My ex-friends, hey, we're gonna power through this here. So we're gonna talk about the so-called fortified elections this week in November 2025. Just a second. StreamYard saying we have trouble with Rumble. Just a second. Just a second. Well, that's unfortunate. I'm not streaming to Kick, and I'm not streaming to Rumble. I'm streaming on X, so hey, we got something. That's something. I'll share this on Rumble later. So I'm recording. It's fine. So before we get started, I want to read this post by Joe Lang. He's always got good stuff here. And this was back in I think May of this year. No, June, when Elon and Trump were having their supposed, falling out after Elon left Doge, and Joe Lang has this to say, and that's going to set the stage for what's happening later. He says, "Listen to my friend Eric Carlson's wisdom here and give him a follow. People keep asking me why Elon would keep bashing Trump's big, beautiful bill and threatening to start a new political party and primary every Republican that votes for it. Eric nails it." And let's see what Eric says here. If Trump wanted to create a new political party, how do you do it without the Republican Party turning on him? You could have someone who is supposed to be fighting with him propose the idea. Why can't Trump propose it? If Republicans turn on Trump, Congress and Senate would pass anything he sends them for the next 4 years. Not to mention they would impeach him. People understand the need for kayfabe, right? Kayfabe being, pro wrestling terminology. Eric nails it, says Joe Lang. Let me peel back the curtain and give you a completely different perspective on what's really happening. Q told us that something big was coming. What was it? Q drop 2635 on December 20th, 2018. The D Party will cease to exist once it's all exposed. Fake news can no longer dampen public awareness of the truth. Dark to light. Q. Q also said this. Q drop 2463 on November 9th, 2018. Will recent expected voter fraud actions by the D Party provide support for a voter ID law? Voter ID law equals death of the D Party. Boomerang suicide? Q. I know it's really hard to imagine this country being mostly unified, but it's coming. Trump has already moved us in a huge way in that direction. But trust me, the crimes against children are going to unify the entire world. A time is coming when the Democrat Party will no longer exist. When all the election fraud, treason, corruption, and crimes against children finally get exposed, the Democrat Party will become toxic, and nobody will ever want to be associated with it again. The Democrat Party is toxic now. Like, don't tell me with a straight face that Zoran Mamdani won the mayor election in New York. He was elected by foreigners and ballots. Does that change your perspective on the possible creation of a new political party? Now use logic. There is nobody that can convince me that Trump and Elon aren't actually carrying out a critical part of the plan by creating this staged fight. Trump knows the power, over time, corrupts politicians. If the Republican Party no longer has any competition, how long will the new Republican MAGA majority becomes corrupted as well? Elon is purposely focusing on the debt and unsustainable fiscal path we are currently on. Do you really think that Elon doesn't already know that Trump is going to transform everything? We're watching a show. That's why I always show the clip with popcorn. Two patriots are both standing up for the American people. Trump is putting the focus on the big, beautiful bill on massive tax cuts and the people being in control of their own money. Trump is also focusing on border security, citizenship, and economic growth policies. Elon is putting the focus on out-of-control government spending and waste. Both arguments are important. Can you see where all this is leading? If the Democrat Party no longer exists, and the two remaining parties are the Republican Party and the American Party, can you see why that would give the power back to the people? If these two parties are competing to see who can outdo the other in being pro-MAGA, pro-Constitution, pro-fiscal sanity, that increases the power of the people to choose their elected representatives. Both parties would actually be fighting for the people rather than controlled by foreign puppet masters. This is the bigger picture. How many times have we been told to just vote for the lesser of two evils? Trump wants us to vote for the better of two MAGA parties. Think bigger, my friends. This temporary feud will be long forgotten 50 years from now if this is the ultimate outcome. So, Trump and Elon are setting up two valid pro-America parties. Trump is, is renovating the Republican Party from the studs up, and Elon is offering an alternative to like a more libertarian alternative, as opposed to the so-called libertarian party that exists now. Now, this program is going to focus on two phony, parties: the Democrat Party, which has been completely overrun by socialists, and the groypers, or the woke right. If I know what I mean by groyper, then you're obviously aware of Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes just exploded on my Twitter feed like the last month since Charlie Kirk's murder. I've heard of him before, but I didn't know what he looked like, and I didn't know what his deal was. I watched one of his live streams right after the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I knew within 10 minutes of him talking that he's a crock of shit. So we're gonna get started. But before we get started, I need to pay some bills. So here's a little ad here. You've probably seen Black Rifle coffee at Walmart, or in the cold brew section at the convenience store, or any other corporate retail chain. Black Rifle purports to be a patriotic company supporting the Second Amendment, but they turned their backs on Kyle Rittenhouse. Phonies. Who can we trust not to sell out? If you want to support a genuine American coffee company that values your right to self-defense, choose Blackout Coffee. Not Black Rifle, Blackout. Blackout Coffee is endorsed by the Second Amendment Foundation. Their products are available online, like any self-respecting 21st century startup, and they just taste better. I know from experience. I treat myself to Blackout Coffee, and you can treat yourself by clicking on the link in my program. Again, that's Blackout Coffee, not Black Rifle. Use my link or my promo code for 10% off your purchase. Okay, so we're going to start with the Election Integrity Chronicles that I've compiled. And there's a lot of cover stories on why the Democrats supposedly swept most of the elections, this week. And Carrie Smith, who's got a great YouTube channel, she has one of the cover stories here. Why did Tucker Carlson choose this week to try to help mainstream an image under a violent extremist like Nick Fuentes, because he had that fawning interview with Nick Fuentes a week or so ago. The timing is important. We are winning. It's almost as if some forces are at work to destroy MAGA on purpose. The fox is in the henhouse, and you're telling us to ignore it. So that's the cover story. The story that Republicans and conservatives and MAGA were distracted by the groyper movement, and that's going to be key when we get to the groyper segment of here. But we should not really, acknowledge any sort of Democrat victory in elections. I always say, even JFK had to cheat. So let's get started. Patriot Oasis says, Justin, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says there's hardly any Republicans in blue states anymore. They all moved to red states. Jack Ciattarelli would have won tonight if he just took all the Republicans who left New Jersey and moved to Florida. When I got elected, we had 300,000 more registered Democrats in Florida, and today we have 1.4 million more Republicans. Nobody has ever in this has ever seen a change that profound. So yeah, I mean, that sounds plausible. I mean, COVID was a centrifuge if there ever was one. I mean, everyone who in 2020 people saw how rotten the Democrat cities were, and they up and left. Now back to Joe Lang again here. He says Trump has been waiting for Zoran Mamdani to win in New York City. He's been bankrolled by the Muslim Brotherhood from the beginning. CARE is a terrorist supporting group that is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. So everyone who's wondering why the heck Zoran Mamdani actually won when he has so much baggage, well, we're going to get to that. But we got to do this first. Joe's been trying to tell people not to fear a Mamdani accession. His candidacy was a gift. Mamdani opens the door to a huge part of the insurgency that took a major foothold under Obama. Was Trump waiting for Mamdani to win? Trump's post on Truth Social after Mamdani's victory. And so it begins. Anybody remember this little nugget of information dropped by Secretary of State Marco Rubio a while back? He's quoting, Marco Rubio says, U.S. working to designate Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. In an interview with Sid Rosenberg on Sid and Friends in the Morning, Rubio was asked about the support New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani is receiving from such groups such as the Muslim Brotherhood. Rosenberg pressed Rubio on whether the administration would move to officially designate the group and possibly the Council on American Islamic Relations, aka CARE, as terrorist entities. Yeah, all of that is in the works, Rubio said. Noting that the Brotherhood operates in multiple branches, each requiring its own designation. He stressed that the process is lengthy and must be thorough, but confirmed that it is a priority. We are constantly reviewing for groups to designate for what they are, supporters of terrorists, maybe terrorists themselves. We haven't done this in a long time, so we've got a lot of catch up to do. And he mentioned a couple names, particularly the Muslim Brotherhood, that are of grave concern. So, there's a great line in The Seven Samurai, which I quote all the time. Every good fortress has a gap. You can't always defend against the enemy. You got to give them an opening where they can attack and then where you can engage and eliminate them. And this might be the gap where we take out our terrorist enemies. True Story Joe, posting on November 5th, says, listen to DJT this morning. Who has access to all the information? He does. Does it sound like we got outvoted last night or something else? So let's listen. This video is 2.5 minutes long. Okay, so it was cut off there. Yeah, Trump is saying we got to end the filibuster, and he's also said this on Truth Social. So, end the filibuster to bring the government shutdown to an end, and really force through the MAGA agenda in Congress. He's talking about the filibuster in the Senate. I think there's a rule where you need like 60 votes to break a filibuster, or you need like a 60 vote supermajority to pass stuff, certain laws. That's just like a rule in the Senate. There's like no like legal precedent for that in the legal, requirement for that in the Constitution for certain things. Just in the filibuster and get it done with. Pay attention to who in the Republican Party and the so-called conservative movement opposes ending the filibuster, and that'll be a sign that they're really not on board with the MAGA agenda. Because, I mean, you might say, hey, if we end the filibuster, the Democrats will do the same thing. If the Democrats ever get in power again, the Republicans will never get in power again because there will never be another election. We're not. Everything the Democrats say about MAGA being, tyrannical, totalitarian, they're talking about themselves. I've covered this in a previous video. Democrats and liberals, and really the woke right too, they are mentally ill. They are proven close to be patients. Therefore, they are projecting. Therefore, they're telling on themselves. Just take them out. We got to get rid of them, because if you are a Democrat after, Charlie Kirk's assassination, that's probable cause. You really need to be removed from the economy and life. So, Raise a Fist is responding to Will Ford here. Will Ford says that this election was so close that the options were what they were, and this was the best option was the winner, is a serious blackmail that is hard to ignore. He's talking about the fact that Mamdani just barely beat Cuomo in New York. And Razor Fist responds saying, the election being so close is a white pill, not a black one, with a few exceptions. The numerical advantage was the Democrats. It was their election to lose. Republicans making it competitive, even with the fairly weak candidates, is a good sign. But not good enough, because we're gonna see later. Curtis Sliwa, the supposed Republican candidate, he's not a fan of Trump, therefore he got smacked. And Trump did endorse Andrew Cuomo, the former governor of New York State. Cuomo is an evil psychopath in his own right, but Trump endorsed him, probably because he's got some leverage on him. We're going to see that later. But moving on, Christy Mayer says, noticing a trend with the election results that went for Democrats. New York, New Jersey, Virginia. You do not need to show ID to vote. Enough is enough. So she's echoing what Trump said. And Elon posts here, very important to appreciate that the debate is not whether illegals will sway future U.S. elections due to census apportionment, but just by how much. Left-leaning organizations like Pew Research represent the low end of estimates. He's responding to a C3 who says, by the numbers, the Democrats have around 50 fraudulent congressional seats due to illegals. 760,000 people per seat. 40 million illegals. That's what all this is about. Power. Every 760,000 illegals deported, the Democrats lose a seat. Exactly. Now, Brian Cates here says, and it's probably good that I'm not directly live streaming on YouTube because I might get dinged for this, but I get more views on Rumble anyway. So I'll have to do some euphemism when I read this here. The postmortems about what the fake GOP uniparty did or did not do to lose these fake and fortified and gay elections in places like New York City and Virginia, and how people who live in New York City voted for a commie Marxist Islamist are all gaslighting direct from the neocon media incorporated. Oh, the GOP uniparty would have won this fake election if only insert stupid fucking talking point here. Guard your mind. The neocons are out in force today because of MAGA trying to paralyze you with examinations of what Trump did wrong or whatever. The elections in blue states and cities are fortified up the ass. Don't wait for the neocon people that you're still listening to and allowing to influence you explain that to you. Most of them still won't admit that 2020 was fortified from Trump. Let no man or woman gaslight you. And he's responding to Dana Lash, who says, thank goodness so many podcast hosts spend so much time hosting and defending Nazi twinks rather than host Winsome Earl Sears, Jack Chiarelli, or Jason Mayeres, or even talk redistricting. They were so helpful to the movement tonight. I think Dana Lash is probably one of those. If she's either ignorant, only looking at things at face value, or she's part of the problem. The whole Tucker and Nick Fuentes controversy was a cover story. Mario Nawfal, switching gears here, points out that 5 European charities funneled $2 billion into American left-wing groups. He posted this on November 2nd. A New American for Public Trust report claims 5 foreign charities from the UK, Denmark, and Switzerland channeled nearly $2 billion into American left-wing NGOs since 2019, funding climate litigation, protests, and anti-Trump campaigns. The biggest players, Quadrature Climate Foundation out of the UK, Oak Foundation from Switzerland, and Children's Investment Fund Foundation from the UK. Okay, those are. Recipients include groups funding climate lawsuits, fossil fuel divestment campaigns, and activist organizations. While foreign nationals can't donate directly to U.S. political candidates, they can pump billions of dollars into 501c3 and 501c4 nonprofits that fund protests, lobbying, and policy campaigns. APT calls it exploiting loopholes to push extremist European vision for America. Source Zero Hedge. So, and I use the word European very loosely because it's not the European people who are pushing this. It's the European supposed government, the European deep state. Every country has a deep state affiliate, even Israel. And the groypers refuse to acknowledge that. So another long post by Joe Lang. He does a lot of these long posts, which are essentially articles or opinion pieces, and I guess that's how he gets so many followers on X. I think maybe I ought to do that too. That's why I'm doing a long form video on X right now. He says, I tried to warn people years ago that those who live in blue states are going to suffer the most. He's posting this on October 27th. Trump can immediately change the federal government, and we're seeing that. But state governments are not going to be cleansed and transformed until the 2020 election fortification is finally exposed and our election system is cleansed. Democrats are desperate for money. Various blue states are facing towering budgets as federal pandemic payments end and expenditures rise. The result is a widening gap between the two parties on tax policies as Democratic leaders seek to avoid massive budget cuts in favor of tax increases. Two of the most economically moronic measures can be found in California and Illinois, where leaders are pushing high tax residents out of their respective states. In California, Governor Newsom is seeking a billionaire tax that would target roughly 180 individuals who are expected to remain in the state, like some voluntary canned hunt. In Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson is facing the same exodus of businesses as California. His solution, a head tax on very large corporations, is needed for the city to survive. Even the far-left governor, J.B. Pritzker, is opposing the move as economically suicidal. So they seem to think that billionaires and corporations have enough money to pay a government's massive debt, as if they don't already get, money from the federal government via U.S. aid. Oh, maybe that's what the deal is. The Democrat states and cities have massive holes in their budgets because Trump has cut off the federal money laundering streams that have been subsidizing blue states for generations. U.S. aid. And that's just one spoke in the wheel. Instead of cutting government spending in their corrupt and bloated governments, they are doing what they always do: raise taxes. Except there's always been a huge flaw in the idea of taxing the rich. Billionaires already pay a lot in taxes, and guess what? They don't have to live in those states or cities. They have the financial freedom to live anywhere in the world and will choose to do so. Money flees where it is treated best. The fake projections of revenue that these blue states and cities expect to collect never materialize. Why? Because billionaires aren't stupid. They'll avoid paying the high taxes and flee to less hostile environments. This has happened throughout history. And when these blue states and cities don't get the revenue they expect, guess what happens? They raise taxes on everyone else. It's like night follows day. Even Pritzker realized that the Chicago mayor's plan to do a tax on headcount at corporations is going to drive those corporations out of the city and probably the state. How many corporations have fled California over the last 15 years? These blue state politicians are caught in a trap. They have laundered federal money to fund their big government unions in order to get elected and stay in office. Those corrupt unions cannot take cuts in revenues because without constant increase in revenues, they know they will lose jobs and the graft is in trouble. The government unions are driving these tax increases. However, groups like the teachers' unions are pushing for this and other new taxes to support, among other things, a bloated pension plan for its members. California unions and liberal academics are demanding a new tax on those billionaires who have not had the sense to leave the state. The 2026 Billionaire Tax Act, which would hit roughly 180 citizens with a new tax demand to plug holes with the state's healthcare system. And if you're wondering why the Democrats are still keeping the federal government shut down going, it's all connected. Money for blue states. While denied by Democrats in Congress, the One Big Beautiful Bill cut off funds used for illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants' healthcare, which produced a shortfall for California. That is part of the money Democrats want restored, where they will keep the government closed. Another 10% of the funds would be used to support public K-12 education. So, I covered in the last video, and I said before, illegal immigrants are a central pillar to the Democrats' election fortification apparatus. The Democrats think it's worth having a shutdown and starving other people with losing SNAP benefits and laying off government bureaucrats in order to keep the illegals fed and funded. That's how important illegals are to election fortification. If you get nothing else from this, situation, look at that. Now, speaking of SNAP, we got Secretary Brooke Rollins. She says, on my first day, USDA, we told every state to send us their SNAP data so we can make sure illegal immigrants weren't getting benefits meant for American families. 29 states stepped up, 21 blue states refused, and 2 sued us for asking. And guess what? In just the states that cooperated, we've already uncovered massive fraud. So, the Democrat Party has turned its back on working Americans and built its entire strategy around protecting illegal aliens. They know that if handouts stop, those illegals will go back home, and Democrats will lose 20 plus seats after the next census. There's a new sheriff in town. POTUS will not tolerate waste, fraud, or abuse while hardworking Americans go hungry. So all the people bitching and moaning about people losing their SNAP benefits, well, a lot of people are not supposed to get any because they're not American citizens. They're not supposed to be in this country because they're illegal. So it's all a grift. They want a huge part of the grift is conflating honest Americans who really truly are not advantaged or they might be disabled or whatever, conflating them with grifters. The same thing happens between real refugees and illegal aliens. The same thing happens with PDF files and the LGBTQ community. The same thing happens with, the George Floyd riots and honest protests and demonstrations against police brutality. So once you understand the Mott and Bailey fallacy, you'll see it everywhere among the propaganda and grift of the left, and as we'll see, the groypers, the woke right. Now, turning to Gavin Newsom, Wall Street Ape says, I hope everyone understands what Gavin Newsom is admitting to here. So let's listen to this video. It's only 16 seconds long. Pause it. Okay. So Wall Street Ape says, I hope everyone understands what Gavin Newsom is admitting to here. Newsom is literally saying the federal government, the U.S. Department of Justice, has no right to stop his illegals from voting on his Prop 50 redistricting election. DOJ is being sent out to California to monitor our election. I have an election. Okay, he's just quoting here. The DOJ is only there to monitor for illegals. Gavin Newsom is saying they can't be there to monitor for illegals. He's literally admitting the federal government can't stop his illegals from voting. So, smoking gun. Okay. Sun Tzu, and we're going to come back to Brian Cates. I'm going to read this whole Brian Cates post, and then we're going to see Sun Tzu's comments on it. Sun Tzu says, Brian Cates says, and he posts this on November 5th, they don't even hide it anymore. And he's referring to the governor's race in Virginia. The CIA, international intelligence conglomerate, and their candidates, now look, there's two ways to look at this. The Great Awakening is going so well, they can't hide it anymore. Who they pick to win the fake and gay fortified elections. So when this happens, more people are going to wake up and we get stronger as we prepare to bring down the whole disease temple on their heads. Or number two, the Great Awakening has completely and utterly failed because we're not yet able to stop the local international crime syndicate affiliates who've been running these states and cities from rigging and fixing their elections yet again. Fraud vitiates everything when you can prove it. And he promotes his show. Whether I think the Great Awakening is still winning or if all hope has been lost, the Great Awakening has failed. So, yeah, there's two ways to look at this. I keep saying the devil and those who belong to him, they're getting desperate. And that's why they're getting so rash. So, Sun Tzu comments and says, I agree with Brian. In my view, President Trump and his team are deliberately allowing the deep state to tie the noose around their own necks. Just a little bit tighter. Trump is poised to kick the chair out from under them. When it happens, justice will be swift and vast. So, yeah, we want, retards to talk and expose themselves. Yeah, Nux Nord talks about this all the time. We want Democrats, we want the left, we want the woke right to talk and make fools of themselves so that everyone can see it and everyone can act accordingly. So back to California again. We're gonna watch this video and read what Wall Street Apes says. So that is the sheriff of San Joaquin County. So Wall Street Ape says, here's how Gavin Newsom steals California elections, or fortifies them, I should say. And if YouTube has a problem with that, well, I think there's a class action lawsuit against YouTube. San Joaquin County Sheriff says voting records show people from outside the county vote in California elections, including Pakistan. The online voter registration system seems to be an honor system. You're able to register and cast a vote if you don't live in the country. He says people from other counties always vote across county lines. Gavin Newsom's Prop 50 reducing is going to be fortified. And it was. Because it won, supposedly, this week. Jordan Sather, back on the topic of Andrew Cuomo, and this is where I got the notion that Cuomo is controlled. He says they have so much leverage on Cuomo from his COVID debacle that if he was elected New York mayor, they could force him to do a good job. Probably why Trump is promoting him here. He'd be an easy asset. So, and he's referring to President Trump's Truth Social post about promoting Cuomo. Now, Cuomo, if you don't remember, was the governor of New York during COVID, and he forced senior citizens into nursing homes where they caught COVID and died. So that's probably like second or third degree murder. Cuomo was a killer. He should not be in power unless he can be controlled and made to do the right thing. But, in any case, Trump still got what he wanted out of New York because he was testing just how fortified New York was. And he and the Department of Justice probably got a lot of, information. So did the military. So, and Mom Diney's going to play to type. He's going to play the socialist, terrorist, Islamist angle up to the hilt. And if you thought, COVID unmasked these weirdos, just wait. And Insurrection Barbie says the same thing. She says, this is going to be an unpopular post, but I don't care because it's true. Which demographic really came out in full force for Imam Donnie? Well, that would be the highly educated, very leftist women who make over $80,000 a year. There's a huge lie that women are sold by the leftist media and the left in general, and that lie is that you don't actually need to have a man or a family or anything other than the altar of self. Now, I'm not saying that every woman should be married with children and be a stay-at-home mom, but if you look at people who voted for disastrous policies, for some reason, they tend to be unmarried, liberal, leftist women. Generally, when people aren't happy, it's much easier to convince them of their victimhood and entice them to vote for collectivism and communism. We really need somebody to actually mentor young women in this country and let them know that the Sex and the City lifestyle is a TV show. It's not real life, because in real life, it's not glamorous or exciting. It's just boring and lonely. So I've heard from one of my born-again female Christian friends before. Liberal women look to Uncle Sam as their sugar daddy, as their provider, in lieu of an actual husband. And it's like, you would think women could succeed in the workplace and raise a family on their own, but for some reason their brains prioritize raising children once they have a family. So they prefer a man who could can earn more money. And the dating scene in this country is so out of joint because women are making more money than men, and so much economic opportunity has been denied to men because of woke HR departments, bogus economies, corporate woke DEI policies. So yeah. Now, here's Scott Pressler, the great voting registration machine. He says on November 4th, breaking, in 3 red districts in Cumberland County, New Jersey, the machines are down. On the phone with legal right now, Cumberland County, New Jersey. So he's a witness to some of the shenanigans in New Jersey. We have to mention this. Tina Peters, she uncovered election fortification in Colorado, and she got jailed for it. She's an innocent political prisoner who's been retaliated against for exposing voter for election fortification. So Rasmussen Reports is responding to Just the News. DOJ Deputy AG Todd Blanche has asked the Federal Bureau of Prisons to find a way to have former Mesa County, Colorado election clerk Tina Peters moved from Colorado State Prison to a federal prison. Our readers know why, because she's in a state prison, and the state of Colorado is controlled by the Democrats. Trump can't directly help her. The Trump team cannot directly help her because they're at the federal level. So there's got to be some way to move her from a state prison to a federal prison where she can at least be better protected. Rasmussen again says poll books facilitate the projection of a needed substitute ballots and allow observation of the behavior of voters in real time. Precise counterfeit ballot stuff counts are critical, lest the scheme be exposed by count center out overvoting. Real-time data is essential. So that's a lot of jargon. They're referring to Peter Bernegger, who says, yes, I posted this info a long time ago. 9:02 p.m. Eastern. Hear it for yourself in Trump's speech where he gave in the evening of January 19th, 2025. The vote counts were blocked, so the bad actors didn't know how many votes to insert, shoving the ballot boxes on November 5th. So that might be one of the ways he uncovered overcame the fortification last year in 2024. But that was just one election. You got to understand, there are so many elected positions in this country. The president is the one position selected that's voted on by the entire country, albeit via the Electoral College. But There were members of Congress, Senate, senators, governors, state legislators, mayors, city council, all the way down. And those are all individual, pockets of either lawfulness or corruption. So we got to clean up the whole thing. And that's why Trump is saying, hey, end the filibuster so we can enact voter ID across the country. Voter ID is going to be one of the key components of election integrity. Liz Harrington points out, Democrats have never been more unpopular. Yet magically, they are still able to flip districts Trump won just 1 year ago and run CIA agents who win by 15 points. It's a mystery. As referring to a CNN poll, the Democrat Party's favorability drops to a record low. And another Wall Street Journal poll says Democrats are least popular than 35 years. So, yeah, after the boondoggle in 2020, we don't have to accept that Democrats win unfortified elections. Moving on to a defender of the Republic, she points out, today's lesson in deception. Deceptive ballot design is the art of manipulation hidden in plain sight, using layout, wording, or placement to confuse voters and quietly tilt elections. From misleading instructions to strategic candidate positioning, these subtle tricks can decide outcomes without anyone realizing the game was fortified from the moment they opened the ballot. So they're responding to Elon saying, New York City ballot form is a scam. No idea is required. Other mayoral candidates appear twice. Cuomo's name is last in the bottom right. So, when Razor Fist mentioned ranked choice voting, that's how a candidate who only wins doesn't win a majority of the votes can still be considered voted for by, saying that they're the second choice of a person. So certain candidates are double dipping. Now, DC Drano points out on October 22nd, we've never seen Obama this politically involved. So supposed alleged Hawaiian president Barack Obama is jumping into multiple races and amendments. That's a good thing. It means he's scared at how much damage Trump and MAGA are doing to his Marxist movement. It's no coincidence all his minions are getting indicted too, because I'm going to make a separate video on that, but what I'm going to call something like the Indictment Chronicles, because they're going after Comey because of something that they easily caught him on. They're going after low-hanging fruit on Obama and Biden's lieutenants and cabinet members and teams. So people are wondering, people are clamoring for arrests. Well, they're coming. We just gotta, figure out the courts and judge problem. But yeah, Obama, he was pitching candidates as a cover story. Eric Doherty, coming back to what Elon said about illegals. The red state of Florida is drawing its 2026 congressional map to add a whopping 3 to 5 Republican seats, removing 3 to 5 Democrats as a result. Gavin Newsom's California map is Democratic plus 5 seats. Florida alone can cancel out Gavin. Then we have Ohio, Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, and Indiana. Keep pushing. Yep. C3, commenting about mail-in ballots. The number of untraceable mail-in ballots for the last 3 presidential elections. In 2024, there was 48 million. In 2020, there was 65 million. In 2016, there was 33 million. Gee, I wonder how they fortified 2020. Then they covered up with January 6th. People need to go to prison. It's absurd they aren't already. Well, it's absurd because the judges are absurd. Judge Boasberg is the ace of spades in that deck. And Peter Bernegger, expanding on this, says, last night there were 125,000 early mail-in votes for Democratic governor candidate Spanberger. This morning, there were over 300,000 early mail-in votes for her. Source, Bolly Do. And take a look at Virginia Attorney General's race. Mayeres versus Jones in Virginia. Republican Mayeres lost right at the time inside the green box. See here. The blue line was Jones. The red line is Myers. And look at that. They switched right around 7:40 p.m. Right at the time of the green box. Yep. GOP, RNC Research, RNC Vote Project, he's tagging them here. Just keep pretending there is no election fortification. By the way, it's how you stay in power, isn't it? So, yeah. I mean, Democrats are bad, but Republicans are just collaborators. It's like Vichy France that was, occupied by the Nazis. We got sellouts in the Republicans Party in the GOP. And to drive that point home, this is from Bannon's War Room. Richard Barris. Bill Ackman just congratulated Marxist Mamdani and offered to help in New York City. This is who the GOP donor class really is. Traitors who lick crumbs off Democrat tables while pretending to share your values. They eat well while you can't pay your rent. It's disgusting. So we're not going to play the video because it's probably cringe, but you get the point. Now, this is from yesterday, November 7th. Clandestine says, Trump continues to talk about terminating the filibuster multiple times a day. This is not random. Trump has Senator Thune's phone number. That's John Thune, who's the GOP leader in the Senate. He can contact Republicans whenever he wants. He doesn't have to post on Truth Social to talk to them. The message is being sent for us because we, the people, are being educated. We, the people, are being informed. The deep states, the criminal syndicate, Babylon, whatever you want to call them, their advantage over all these years has been secrecy, hiding information from us. They kind of leak things out because they think it's either part of their spiritual warfare. They kind of say things in the media and like Hollywood and TV shows, whatever, and we're not supposed to take it seriously, but we are. They operate through secrecy. And this whole, Q's plan, the Great Awakening, isn't just, the White Hats are going to take care of things. It's all about bringing the American people and people around the world into the movement by educating them. We are the ones who are going to, put an end to the deep state players. We are the ones who are going to put an end to Babylon. Because, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So we are giving a lot of people eyes to see with. And Mamdani, Jack says, Communist Mamdani after his election win. This movement is actually, let's just listen to the video. Okay, so Mamdani is thanking the foreigners in New York City. They may or may not be legal immigrants, but are they law-abiding foreigners? You gotta wonder. Mamdani is so over the top and beyond the pale. I wonder if he's a secret white hat. I wonder if he's like one of those actors Trump mentioned once. Because he's going to lay it out for people to see. Now, speaking of Mamdani, we got another long post by Joe Lang here, and I think this is very important to go over because it involves money. As Trump said, and so it begins, Mamdani thinks government can dictate grocery prices. He was never taught true history. Or is there something bigger happening? Because Mamdani wants to open public or government-run grocery stores. Or is there something bigger happening? There's only two possibilities, and they both lead to the same place. Shortages. Either Mamdani will set price controls on groceries and have a really hard time buying groceries from companies that can sell them for a profit instead of taking a loss, which leads to shortages just like in the old Soviet Union. Or Mamdani will quickly spend the taxpayers' money to subsidize groceries in order to keep the prices down and then quickly run out of money. putting the city even more financial strain, also leading to shortages, or something bigger happening. There's actually a third possibility. Keep your eye out for this option. While all the media focuses on the New York City government socialist communist aspect of the story, I think they'll be completely missing the real reason for these city grocery stores. What do you want to bet that a whole lot of taxpayer subsidized grocery stores are going to be making big profits for being in business? We covered this last time with SNAP benefits in Walmart. And what do you want to bet that these taxpayer subsidized grocery stores are going to become a monopoly within many parts of the city of New York because they will have a built-in government advantage? I mean, what other reason does a company become a monopoly other than government putting their finger on the scale? What do you want to bet that the majority, if not all of these taxpayer subsidized grocery stores, are going to be owned and operated by Muslims? Question: if you want to fund the Muslim Brotherhood, what better way to do that than to give them taxpayers' money and control the food distribution in many parts of New York City? The Muslim Brotherhood gets funded through all kinds of money laundering schemes around the world. If you thought Mamdani wasn't going to pay them back for their support during this campaign, you just don't realize why they installed him in the first place. Now they now control the taxpayer spigot in the biggest city in the country, and this is just the beginning. So Joe Lang's responding to this article, this headline by Fred Krueger. Mayor-elect Mamdani announces Food for All plan. City-run grocery stores to open across Manhattan. Yep. They need this because at the federal level, Trump and Elon cut off the spigot with Doge. Now we can't talk about, all the election fraud and election fortification and mail-in ballots and whatever, but it's also worth pointing out that Lucky Teeter here says Republicans ran 2 never-Trumpers in New Jersey and Virginia, and both are getting annihilated in the exit polls. Chiarelli publicly stated Trump a charlatan who preys on our worst instincts and fears and embarrasses the country. This is the Republican candidate in, I think, New Jersey. Winston Murrell Sears called Trump a liability and refused to support him in 2024. Both attacked Trump over January 6th. At least they got their consultants rich, so yeah. Yeah, these two are probably part of the woke right uniparties. I mean, it's all one big wop. I mean, we talk about Nazis and communists and Republicans and Democrats and the Chamber of Commerce, whatever, all being against each other, but they're all just different tentacles of the same monster. Now, before we continue and end the segment, we got to read this post by Cynical Publius because we're going to read this article that he refers to here, and it's going to be a big explain how probably Trump overcame the 2024 election fortification and how MAGA is going to overcome it in the future. But let's read what Cynical Publius says, and then we'll move on to the actual article. MAGA for the long term. Below is a really, really important article. Article link is one post below because the algorithm hates third-party links. Yes, I know it's the Washington Post. I recommend figuring out a way to get behind the paywall to read it anyway. It's that important, and I did, so we'll read it. To quickly summarize, it's an article that explains the largely unknown network of business persons and politicos who are extraordinarily important in the 2024 election and are now feverishly working behind the scenes to make MAGA a perpetual force, even when Donald Trump leaves office. The main focus of the article is on a man named Chris Buskirk, a businessman and largely anonymous dynamo who is essential to the MAGA movement and who was a key player in electing Trump 2.0 and bringing J.D. Vance to prominence. I'll be honest, much of this article was news to me, and my first gut reaction upon reading this article was, ruled by elites? No way. That's what so-called progressives do. Are we conservatives trying to be what Woodrow Wilson wanted? No way. But then it dawned on me. This is the Washington Post, and it's impossible for them to write a fair article. In this case, they want to cater to their core leftist audience by demonizing anything on the right. But this particular article also has the specific purpose of scaring conservatives like you and me by evoking the anti-elitism sentiments that are the heartbeat of our movement. Once I realized that and thought things through, I'm no longer scared, but excited. I'll explain. When progressives talk about rule by elites, and I hate that term, what they really mean is rule by unelected bureaucrats outside the bounds of the Constitution. They're talking about the kinds of agencies people like Big Chief Lizzie Warren fight for, such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The CFPB is specifically designed to be unaccountable to any voter or any elected leader and that has a huge impact on all our lives. That sort of extra constitutional chicanery is how the left wants to rule. FYI, so many of the federal court cases that have bedeviled Trump 2.0 are all about the same problem, putting power in the hands of a perpetual bureaucratic unelected ruling class instead of the elected constitutional branches that are in power is actually supposed to reside. However, the aristocracy, note the scare quotes by WAPO designed to create fear, just like they're using the word secretive and deploy its arsenal, discussed in this article is not designed to operate outside the Constitution. Instead, it seeks to leverage the power and influence of a circle of wealthy, grounded, conservative individuals who came up through the working class to elect populist leaders who will operate inside the bounds of the Constitution. Let me say that again. Who will operate inside the bounds of the Constitution. What really scares the WAPO on the left is the fact that MAGA has organized the political machine to achieve and maintain elected power in the same effective way Democrats have been organized for decades, and which the GOP has failed so miserably at in the same time span. Thanks to heroes like Chris Buskirk, we on the right now have a powerful set of political organizations and processes to rival the best the Democrats have ever had to offer. I know many of you are scared as to what will happen to MAGA when Trump leaves office, as he inevitably will. But this article tells us the incredibly good news that this is being solved behind the scenes as we speak. Hallelujah. The other scare that this article tries to create is the idea that somehow GOP billionaires are looking to line their own pockets by sponsoring those taking office. Wrong. That's the George Soros way. What people like Buskirk and Vance are trying to do is not to enrich themselves, but to restore the middle class. When we hear about pro-business policies in this article, the intent is not to make the rich richer, but to make sure that young people can have a comfortable middle-class lifestyle, like was once the American norm. Note the reference to the article that non-college grads achieving six-figure salaries in the manufacturing sector. That's what these patriots are really about. Sorry, Elizabeth Duskin, the article's author and hypocrite. We on the right don't have an elected aristocracy ruling us, and we don't want one. Instead, we have wealthy, conservative men and women trying to leverage their blessings to follow the Constitution and create a populist economy that restores the middle class that once made us the envy of the world. Like I said, I'm excited to know that what we have all fought for will persevere, endure, and win. And this is great news. And I'm gonna include a few more cynical Publius tweets later, because cynical Publius, he's taken on himself. He's an older person. He's I think he's an Army veteran or Marine veteran, and he has lots of stories about being in the service. And he's also a lawyer and been in the private sector. He's been showing great compassion lately for the plight of young people in this economy who cannot buy a home, start a family, find loving, caring relationships and marriages. So I think he's someone to follow. But let's read this WAPO article. Just want to see how long it is first, because this is brand new to me, and I'm looking at this through archive.ph. You know, we're gonna storm through it here. The secretive donor circle that lifted J.D. Vance is now rewriting MAGA's future. In 2019, a small group of right-wing donors rented a resort outside the 100-person town of Rockbridge, Ohio, for someone to secure the future of the MAGA movement. They aimed to turn a singular candidate, President Donald Trump, into an enduring political coalition, with a pipeline of voters, donors, and candidates that would cement a radical transformation for the GOP. And she says like that's a bad thing. Convened by Silicon Valley billionaire Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance, then an investor who had written a best-selling memoir, the meeting included hedge fund heiress Rebecca Mercer, then Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and economist Warren Cass, according to two people familiar with the meeting. The people spoke on a condition of anonymity to describe the private gathering, details of which have not been previously reported. But the person in the room who had solidified the group's ambitions was someone with a decidedly lower profile, an Arizona insurance entrepreneur and conservative media figure named Chris Buskirk. Today, Buskirk helms a Rockbridge Network, a secretive organization birthed out of the weekend gathering that has established itself as one of the most influential forces in GOP politics. Political strategists credit the close-knit network of businessmen come donors with helping fuel the president's re-election last year and propelling one of its own, Vance, into the vice presidency. With significant funding from tech leaders, Rockbridge aims to equip MAGA to outlive Trump. The group has no website or public-facing entity, but it has assembled pollsters, data crunchers, online advertisers, and even a documentary film arm. It's gearing up to deploy its arsenal for the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential contest, in which many Rockbridge members hope Vance will be the nominee. The group has assembled a database with deep profiles of potential voters through non-political memberships, including outdoors groups and churches, according to a person directly familiar with the organization. Well, yeah, I mean, outdoorsmen. I mean, Donald Trump Jr. is such a person. So, I mean, when you live out in the country, you tend to be more conservative. Buskirk's ties to Trump's orbit go beyond Rockbridge. 1789 Capital, the venture capital firm he co-founded with investor Omid Malik, focuses on what partners call patriotic capitalism and now counts Donald Trump Jr. as a partner. The pair, along with administration officials and friends, recently launched Executive Branch, a $500,000 a head membership club for Trump supporting business leaders to hobnob in D.C. These organizations have a collective ambition, according to Buskirk, which is to give the business people he sees as vital to the country's future a role in shaping government and lasting political power. So you got to ask though, what kind of business people are they? Rent seekers, like all the billionaire class, like Jeff Bezos and Sam Altman, who get rich by greasing palms, or is it honest, business people who make money the right way? There's so precious few of that post-COVID because a lot of honest business has been crushed. Their efforts are grounded in a controversial theory of social progress. That a select group of elites are exactly the right people to move the country forward, a position Buskirk argues is not in defiance of MAGA's populism. Well, okay. We don't need to see it that way. Putting industry leaders in positions of power is a hallmark of Trump's presidency, from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick to tech titan Elon Musk, and Buskirk says the MAGA movement has energized a new generation of stewards for the country. His various projects echo what some on the right call Aristopopulism. They aim to build a bridge between wealthy capitalists and the working class people they intend to represent, according to interviews with Buskirk and 9 other people in his inner circle, profitably reindustrializing the country and tying their interests to that of the base. And nothing wrong with that as long as their interests are aligned with other people's interests too. Are you going to mention that? Or are you going to twist words? You either have an extractive elite, an oligarchy, or you have a productive elite, an aristocracy, in every society, he said in an interview in his office in Scottsdale, Arizona. Many innovative periods in history have been driven by such an aristocracy, Buskirk argues, a point he makes in his 2023 book, America and the Art of the Possible. In the classic Greek sense, the term isn't pejorative, he says, but a proper elite that takes care of the country and governs it well so that everyone prospers. As Buskirk sees it, he has approached the political market as a businessman, identifying a gap and taking deliberate steps to close it. The right had what he calls a coordination problem. Voters who had unexpectedly elected Trump as a nascent group of wealthy people who become alienated by the progressive left. But the sides lack organizing infrastructure. Buskirk uses a one-liner to describe his efforts. Brains plus money plus base. Others describe his impact more forcefully. Though people still see Trump's support as a cult of personality, said Cass, chief economist of the conservative think tank American Compass, a powerful ecosystem now backs the MAGA movement. Chris is the convener of that ecosystem, he added. He declined to comment on Rockbridge's founding event. Thiel declined to comment. Mercer did not respond to a request for comment. Relatively unknown outside his rarefied circle of business leaders and tacticians, Buskirk is an unusual figure to step into a role once dominated by the Koch brothers, the deep-pocketed Republican mega donors who have opposed many of Trump's trade policies. That's key. He's not a meme-throwing MAGA firebrand. Friends describe Buskirk as a dogged tactician who is fiercely perceptive. He was the first mover to recognize that there were going to be thousands of well-off people who no longer felt at home in the Democrat Party, said Omid Malik, Buskirk's partner and co-founder of 1789 Capital. Vance told the Post in a statement that Buskirk is an original thinker who saw, before almost anyone, how the right combination of ideas, organizing, and funding can ensure lasting political success for the Republican Party. Outside of electoral politics, Buskirk's projects aim to push unrestrained capitalism into American life. Good. 1789 Capital, he says, serves as a testing ground for the idea that homegrown innovation can revive America's industrial base, and what the firm's partners pitch on their website as the next chapter in American exceptionalism. The firm, which has invested in roughly 30 companies, has funded startups tied to anti-woke politics and the Trump administration's economic agenda, including companies that mine rare earth minerals, build AI factories for war, or 3D print rocket fuel. All right. As Buskirk's network has become entwined with the Trump administration, the cohort has formed a party circuit for Washington's new power broker class. Rockbridge's semi-annual conference at the Ritz-Carlton in Key Biscayne, Florida, in April, which featured Make America Healthy Again themed breathwork and yoga sessions, included Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and Middle East Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. Buskirk's friend, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., attended the opening of executive branch in June, which serves high-end wine and sushi but no seed oils. Those in Buskirk's network view their growing clout as evidence of government finally working to cheerlead rather than chastise society's innovators, unleashing a pent-up economic engine that they say was suppressed during the Biden occupation. Yet entities like Rockbridge in 1789, some critics see something more pernicious: the rise of a group of unelected American oligarchs who are undermining Trump's promises to benefit working people. Since coming into office, the Trump White House has rolled out a raft of new policies that benefit tech entrepreneurs, including lifting export controls on AI technology and signing executive orders on legislation promoting cryptocurrency. President Trump's first and only focus is restoring prosperity for the working class Americans, who resoundingly reelected him back into the White House. White House spokesman Kush Desai sent a statement. So, on that, this Washington Post author is telling on herself. She's telling on the Democrat side because they collude with corporations all the time. You know, I used to think very poorly of Elon Musk because he was getting all sorts of money from the government, all sorts of like grants and whatever. But at least he was honest about it. We're finding out a lot of corporations like Amazon or Apple or Google, whatever, and even Disney, they get ahead by greasing palms, by kissing the ring. So, looks like Buskirk and his clique are fighting fire with fire. Continuing. Since Trump Jr., and now Trump Jr., Don Jr. is going to be really important because he's also an investor. President Trump, he's in real estate. Don Jr. is in capital and in investing. So that's his big thing. Since Don Jr. joined 1789 as a partner last November, the firm has raised hundreds of millions of dollars and now has more than $1 billion in assets, according to two people familiar with the firm. This summer, the government dropped two Biden-era federal investigations into Polymarket, a blockchain-based betting startup that 1789 has invested in, and where Don Jr. now sits as on an advisory board. So, Polymarket. Remember how big that was last year when it was predicting, different races? It's generally the case that what's good for business is good for America. But I don't think people surrounding the president are representative of American business, said Michael Streen, Director of Economic Policies at the right-leaning American Enterprise Institute, which has received funding from the Koch's Philanthropic Work Network. The government's job is to advance the prosperity of the nation, not the prosperity of wealthy individuals, founders, and executives. Well, speak for yourself, dipshit. To Buskirk, these critiques miss the point. He says he's determined to bring the business people that put Trump back in the White House to Washington, even if he doesn't much like the city. He describes politics as venal and DC think tanks as very cliche, squared. Every cliche squared, saying the culture must be rebuilt from the ground up. So that's not an attractive place to spend time, but it's also really necessary, he said. Self-government means you have to actually be involved in something you don't want to do. A coordination problem. Ask Buskirk to rattle off where he is on any given day, and the 56-year-old father of four might name 7 different cities. He splits his time between his Scottsdale family office, Palm Beach, Florida, where 1789 Capital is headquartered, Dallas, San Francisco, Austin, and reluctantly, D.C. He says he's on the phone from the moment he wakes up until bedtime, always making time for Vance when the vice president's schedule allows. But Buskirk's early life was spent almost entirely in Arizona. Though he was born on a military base in Germany, where his father was stationed in the army during the Cold War, he grew up in Scottsdale. He spent weekends working at the family company, which insured homes and small businesses across the state. The household was patriotic to the nth degree, Buskirk recalls, and they were stalwart subscribers to a conservative magazine, the National Review. As a young adult, Buskirk pursued a master's degree in political theory and interned at the Claremont Institute, a right-wing think tank inspired by the political philosopher Leo Strauss. But he quit both the think tank and the degree, judging academia too impractical. He returned home to Scottsdale to start an insurance firm, doing underwriting for ambulance vendors and other unconventional businesses. Over the next 2 decades, he built and sold 4 other insurance-related companies. His family had become alienated from politics. The Buskirks canceled their National Review subscription during the mid-2000s, disgusted by a Republican establishment they believed had led the country astray. The Iraq War had become a smokescreen, Buskirk said, distracting from the stark economic problems emerging before his eyes. I think we're only halfway through this piece. This is good stuff. Considering. Visiting close family in Michigan, he watched as entire factories were literally just packed up, created into 40-foot containers, and sent to China after the country joined the World Trade Organization in 2001. He said, Americans, he said, were going to work for low-paying service jobs, $8 an hour at McDonald's versus $25 at the Ford plant. Then illegal immigrants came and took those jobs too, he said. He raged to friends that the American dream, that you don't have to do anything extraordinary to live a dignified life, was becoming harder, but he felt powerless. I was just like, some guy in Arizona, he recalled. What am I going to do? When Barack Obama came to the scene in the late aughts, Buskirk watched as he electrified the culture. In contrast, he felt the GOP and its institutions had languished on autopilot. During those years, Buskirk had sold off the last of the insurance businesses he had built up with his father. By the time Trump came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower to announce his presidential candidacy in 2015, Buskirk had more time on his hands. The Arizona entrepreneur was initially skeptical of the New York reality show host, who he worried viewed the presidency as a publicity stunt. But when he watched old interviews with Trump, he heard a drumbeat about how American leaders were not putting Americans first. I'm like, he's actually been saying the same thing for 40 years, Buskirk recalled. And that's when I realized, okay, he's for real. And the people that were saying he is not serious are lying. In July 2016, Buskirk founded an online magazine, American Greatness. Oh, okay, that's him. Which highlighted the undeniable need for a new articulation of conservatism. It received funding from Thiel, who had shocked liberal Silicon Valley with his $1 million donation to Trump, and had recently been introduced to Buskirk by a friend. The soil of the conservative movement is exhausted, the editors wrote in an opening manifesto. It needs fertilization, resowing, and diligent cultivation if it's to thrive again. Thiel put Buskirk in touch with his protege, hillbilly elegy author J.D. Vance. Vance and Buskirk became fast friends. The men spent a year and a half just nerding out with no particular end in mind, Buskirk recalls, just feeling that we should create something. In 2019, Vance and Thiel summoned a dozen or so people to an inn in rural Ohio, located just outside the tiny town that had become the organization's namesake. Some attendees were staunchly pro-Trump, like Buskirk. Others had their doubts, but all of them felt that any success that took place during the Trump years could easily become a fluke if a Democrat retook the White House, said Blake Masters, an investor who met Buskirk that weekend. We spent so much time bemoaning the effectiveness of the left, Masters adds. They had a terrible agenda, but they are very effective at organizing. The right had just been coasting for a long time, and its institutions had just started to decay. It became clear to some of those present that MAGA had a network problem. While donors on the right, such as the Kochs, had spent years building their organizations, wealthy people who supported Trump and the emerging constellation of right-wing viewpoints he represented didn't really know each other, Buskirk said. And people who had voted for Trump, including a working-class cohort, weren't organized either. There was no coordination, no management, no planning. It all just kind of happened, he recalled. And what if we just said, okay, look, these are 2 problems that, if solved, would make everything else work better and be more effective. Let's set about solving that. The making of a movement. Buskirk returned from the summit energized, and he became a student of political organizing. He started from first principles, reading Roots to Power, an influential left-wing organizing manual from the 80s. Along with Vance, he began creating case studies of political organizations on the left and the right. documenting their failures and successes. The National Rifle Association stood out. The NRA, Buskirk and his partners concluded, have been very successful at organizing one of its two constituencies, Second Amendment advocates. But its other constituency, outdoorsmen who loved hunting, was not as well organized, and they were unlikely to register to vote. But outdoorsmen, a Democratic coalition from the 1960s, had significant overlap with demographics that voted for Trump. This is actually going to be a hole that needs to be filled, he said, if he could find something that makes it worth their time to actually pay attention. Buskirk will not go into any details about Rockbridge operations, but he says that on a high level, he devised a classic online sales funnel to entice people to join social media groups based on affiliations. This included small business owners, outdoorsmen, and church attendees. This is the opposite of how political organizations tend to function, persuading people to come to your side by brute force, Buskirk said, blasting out ads right before an election. Rockbridge, by contrast, took a more gradual approach. Build a trust relationship and give people some sort of benefit. Only then can you ask them to do something. Business funnels. I talk about that in my ebook. Be True, Cut Through. It's on sale at Amazon. This is the opposite of how. Okay. By April 2022, Vance was making his first long shot bid for political office. Malik hosted a small fundraiser for him at a restaurant in Palm Beach. The investor had relocated from New York City for the previous year after defecting from the Democratic Party over coronavirus restrictions and tech platforms policing a speech about the coronavirus. Buskirk attended, along with Don Jr. The group hopped over to Mar-a-Lago, where Buskirk was throwing a Rockbridge conference. The men spent a week bonding over their rage about what they viewed as online censorship and a feeling that innovation was being stymied in favor of liberal priorities such as sustainability and diversity initiatives. A lot of us are going also about the same age, noted Malik, who said he feels the group is ushering in a generational shift. Malik and Buskirk went into business together the following year, starting 1789 Capital, named after the year the Bill of Rights was proposed. It initially focused on what Malik had dubbed anti-woke companies. Their first investment was in Last Country Incorporated, a new media and entertainment company founded by Tucker Carlson, who had been pushed out of Fox News. Okay, we're going to talk about Tucker a little bit later, but oh, that's a connection. J.D. Vance has Tucker Carlson's son working for him, so that's a connection. He'd been pushed out of Fox News. The partners went on to invest in Grab-A-Gun, an online gun marketplace, Enhanced Games, which allows athletes to take performance-enhancing drugs, and Hadrian, a startup making AI factories for defense. The partners have also taken positions in 3 of Elon Musk's companies, SpaceX, Neuralink, and XAI. Will Edwards, whose Dallas-based startup Firehawk Aerospace specializes in 3D printing solid rocket fuel to be used in missiles, said many Silicon Valley venture capitalists had rejected his pitches outright because they didn't want to fund companies selling exclusively to the military. Chris thought that was absurd, Edwards said. Buskirk, who has since led a funding round that put $60 million into a Firehawk, took a particular interest, traveling to Dallas to tour Edwards' factory, where he said, workers without college degrees can make 6-figure incomes, because I have a college degree. It's in liberal arts. I barely use it. The main thing I learned from college was how to write research papers. Buskirk believes Edwards' company is economic proof of the investors' political arguments. The U.S. is unlikely to make iPhones and Nike shoes again, he says, but it can revive its industrial base, particularly in national defense, and help restore the middle class. This goal is one of President Joe Biden also tried to accomplish when he signed the $52 billion CHIPS Act in 2022, which aimed to restore advanced manufacturing jobs with the largest support package for domestic chips and manufacturing in a generation. Trump has criticized the grants as wasteful and clawbacks from the funds. Strain, the American Enterprise Institute economist, almost done. Said the political rhetoric of the MAGA movement misconstrues the nation's actual economic picture. Technical innovation and not outsourcing have been the main driver of loss of manufacturing jobs, he says, adding that many of those arguing that homegrown manufacturing will revive America are the same investors pushing major labor displacement through artificial intelligence. The purpose of artificial intelligence, I kind of touched on in the last video, but the purpose of artificial intelligence is kind of a end run around the green agenda, because we need to build up our nuclear power and energy production in America, AI is going to be like the cover story for that. And if you're worried about AI taking your job, be more concerned about AI helping you run your own business. I mean, who wants to work for a corporation in 2025 unless that corporation's values line up with your own? Where was I? Okay. Cass of American Compass said the scale of investment required to rebuild working class communities is far greater than what 1789 or other like-minded investors can spend. The experiments Buskirk and his partners are funding are important, he said, because they blaze a trail. The impact of Rockbridge and super PACs in the 2024 election is not well understood. Rockbridge's affiliated super PAC, Turnout for America, was one of the handful of groups that canvassed swing states on behalf of the Trump campaign, including Charlie Kirk's Turning Point action. Turnout for America spent $34.5 million on the 2024 cycle, according to FEC records, far less than the $261 million from Elon Musk's American PAC. But internal Rockbridge data suggests some measure of effectiveness, which insiders attribute to its years-long voter profiling and mobilization efforts. The super PAC identified several million citizens, low propensity voters in 7 swing states, they believed would vote for Trump if nudged to go to the polls. The group calculated that Trump would win those states if they could motivate 40% of those voters to go to the polls. In the end, Rockbridge's 3,000 canvassers turned out at 50%. So 2 people with direct knowledge of internal stats. So that's 3,000 Scott Presslers. That's pretty good. Today, the group's vibe is euphoric. Interest has surged since the election, according to Buskirk, with roughly half of new members coming from the tech industry. Several of the group's founders are billionaires. Prominent investors Mark Andreessen and David Sachs are already members. Still, Firehawk founder Edwards, who joined Rockbridge with an invitation from Buskirk, said the events feel warm, like a close group of people who enjoy each other's company. Edwards says he lives in a duplex and drives a Toyota. A wide range is represented, including Next Gen, an under 30 division that includes Buskirk's son, Chris, a recent college graduate. Man, I was thinking back when I was laid off from Yellow Book in 2014 and I was looking for a job. I kind of came across the whole entrepreneur and freelance community in the Iowa City Cedar Rapids corridor, and I was so enamored with the people there. And a lot of them ended up being woke nitwits. But I still believe in entrepreneurship, just not the people in my area. We need to if you're in the Cedar Rapids area, if you're in Iowa City, the 380 corridor, hit me up. Let's do some networking because I'm tired of sitting around at home, working from home and driving Uber. I mean, I like Uber, but I have ADHD. I need some sort of novelty to get me through the day, get me through the week. Richard Painter, a corporate law professor at the University of Minnesota, who served as chief ethics lawyer for the Bush White House, said this influx of interest in Rockbridge, 1789, and executive branch creates the appearance of a pay-to-play network of people who are paying to get access to administration officials or the Trump family. He also said he would have advised administration officials not to attend these gatherings if they happened in his time. Buskirk declined to address this criticism. Well, it sounds like a bad faith argument. In a text message sent while overseas on business, he said that American greatness will only be accomplished by the intentional cultivation of talented, high-agency people working together in high-trust environments. Hello, blockchain. His book lists historical movements when elite networks move society forward, including Florence during the Renaissance, mid-century America, and the county of Lancashire, England, during the Industrial Revolution. The Scottish Enlightenment was actually the work of a few dozen people, he notes, who developed long-term friendships at a private social club called the Select Society. Parallels to remarkably innovative historical periods were starting to happen, he said, but the full flourishing of America's latent potential was not guaranteed. I pray that it is, he said. There is much to be done. So there's that. So that's how we're laying the groundwork for the future of MAGA and the future of the economy. We need to get money out of the the private Western Central Bank and the whole Federal Reserve System. So I think it's time to pay a few more bills. So let's talk about another sponsor. Here we go. Prior to President Trump's second term, we saw every mainstream corporation push woke politics. Politics most Americans object to. Bud Light, Target, Disney, Jaguar, and more are boycotted because of toxic messaging. But did you know your own retirement money is driving it? Your 401ks and IRAs are made of shares of publicly traded corporations. And those shares are controlled by big institutions like BlackRock. BlackRock says they're walking away from woke DEI policies, but other institutions are sticking with them. If you want your hard-earned money out of their control, consider rolling over to iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital runs retirement accounts in gold, silver, and cryptocurrency. Precious metals have been trusted for thousands of years, and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are decentralized. They're out of the control of any single person or organization. Take back your freedom by taking control of your money. Click on the link to get started. So yes, click on the affiliate link in the description, or if you're on Twitter or Kick, click on the link in the bio. So we're about halfway through. We gotta talk about the woke right now, because with that Washington Post article, they gave us a peek at Tucker Carlson and some of the kind of the inroads he made towards MAGA, and now he's absolutely blowing up, disintegrating his credibility over the issue of Israel. He's an interloper. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. So you got wolves like in sheep's clothing, like Nick Fuentes, Candace Owens. Who else? They've just been flooding my Twitter feed the last few months. Between like May and October, it was all criticism of Israel, and it was really distressing me because I'm a born again Christian. I know the importance of Israel. I know the importance of the Israelites and the Jews, and there's just so much propaganda, and it's just now starting to be dissected and taken apart. But before we go through my compilation of the woke right and the groypers, which are Nick Fuentes' followers, let's read this thread by a Data Republican, because from what I've seen of Data Republican, she's one of the good guys. She's been blowing up on X, and she's been referred to by the X22 Report. That's kind of how I found her. But she says this: fake MAGA, foreign ops, and the Nick Fuentes factor. This week on X, and she's saying this, posting this on June 20th, so she's setting the stage here. This week on X has been chaotic, and every influencer I've talked to feels it. A new report dropped, and it's making serious claims that foreign propaganda accounts are masquerading as MAGA to hijack conservative spaces and even push people to turn on Trump himself. The report goes beyond analyzing bots and foreign actors. It names names. And the New York Post article buried the lead. It explicitly calls out Nick Fuentes and his network of central amplifiers. Nick Fuentes is the third rail of MAGA X, and for good reason. To speak of him is to invite wrath and harassment. I could have left this volatile topic alone, and I know I would have been better off for it. But when I see what Sarah Censored has endured, and the grace and courage she's shown, it's a reminder of 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. How can I possibly stay silent? It's time we break the taboo of calling out wolves in MAGA clothing, even the ones the bots prop up. I read the entire report. Now I'm going to walk you through what it really says and what we need to watch for. Patience as I assemble this thread in real time. Sarah is Censored is a pregnant independent journalist, was the last major influencer to speak ill of Nick Fuentes as of June 20th. Her life has been made hell as a result. This is a small sampling of the harassment she has received. So let's. Okay, that's enough. Okay, that's enough. This is why I own a Glock. This is why I collect fixed blade knives, and that's why I own a few cans of mace, pepper spray, and I have compiled a playlist of martial arts and outdoor and survival YouTube videos. So click on the link in the description. Another sampling. The screenshots were so vulgar I cannot post them all. I share them to show what it means to cross Nick Fuentes, and if we are to clean our own house, we must be prepared to confront a great evil. So I don't know if I'll play all these. Nick Fuentes literally had his followers swear to kill, rape, and die for him. Okay, he's either a really bad shock jock or he's seriously a psychopath. Now moving on to the actual report. This is published by a Network Contagion Research Institute, an NGO with opaque funding and less than transparent motives. It has impressive data science, but the way it presents itself is often biased. So NCRI is the abbreviation. It was founded by Joel Finkelstein, and the NCRI itself has been used to suppress disinformation and promote pro-government narrative. I say this because I want to acknowledge the motives behind this report. That being said, it does a reasonable job keeping, for example, in dissecting the usage of Christ is King, the explicitly greenlit Jack Posobiec, something many with an agenda failed to do. So you might remember the Christ is King, trend a few months ago, and they said it was a way to harass Jewish people. I said Christ is King because Christ is King, but but the Jews have a very valid reason for rejecting him, and it's explained in the Bible, in the New Testament. Go read Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 11. God has a separate plan for the Jews. They're taken care of. Don't worry about them. So I even pay attention to the report because I was able to independently verify information within it. And she shows this line graph here. There was a spike during Ukraine. For those of you who can't see that really small print, October 7th, that was the terror attack in Israel. Something Russia, Trump assassination. Paradigm DC. I don't know what that is. Continuing, the gist of the report: foreign state actors and bots amplify a handful of X accounts making controversial posts, foremost among them being Nick Fuentes and his followers. An example is the May 21st killing of the Israel embassy staffer. So yeah, that young couple who were assassinated outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Fuentes says, false flag, right on schedule. There goes free speech and diplomacy. Jake Shields, who is a real piece of shit, who actually makes violent threats on Twitter, he says false flag. And Jackson Hinkle says Israeli embassy workers were shot by a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. It's either a common knowledge that PSL is filled with federal agents. This assassination is a false flag. So saying that the assassination of these people was a false flag. We now know that Elias Rodriguez, the killer, was a member of the PSL, despite their denials. We also know that the PSL is backed by Neville Singham, who is under congressional investigation for acting on behalf of the CCP. Foreign state actors certainly will want to keep this information hidden and amplify the false flag narrative. And indeed, this is what happened. Nick Fuentes' false flag post got 48,000 likes, and NCRI noted bot-like responses. Now, caveat. X's comment hiding system is odd, and I was only able to view a few dozen comments or so out of the 1.2 thousand comments he got. So I wasn't able to independently verify that part. However, Sarah Censored has commented to me many times that she noticed the same phenomenon, and others have pointed and others have noticed as well. Nick Fuentes' army is artificially boosted in some part, and it seems reasonable that foreign actors invested in exploring the MAGA coalition is the reason why. Note the timestamps. The pattern typically is Nick Fuentes tweets out something controversial and divisive of MAGA, such as Trump being implicated in the Epstein files, and the alleged bad actors amplify and follow. So a lot of this current consternation and stress this year started with the whole Axios Epstein article. Go watch my video where I stand with Pam Bondi, where I tear that down. But continuing. Now, I want to emphasize that this report is biased in naming certain tweets as as actors or foreign interests. For example, it accuses Draven Noctis of pushing pro-Kremlin narratives, but that does not mean Draven Noctis is acting on behalf of Russia. However, others like Jackson Hinkle do seem to be genuine actors of the Russian state. He regularly gives interviews to pro-Russia outlets and moved to Moscow. And she's referring to American anti-Israel pro-Kremlin activist and influencer Jackson Hinkle attends funeral for Hezbollah leader, gives studio interviews to a U.S. designated terrorist, Hezbollah-owned El Manar, and Iran's Channel 3, and talks to Lebanon's Mayadeen TV. Says he has been living in Moscow for 5 months for fear of arrest in the U.S. I recall, I don't have time to look it up, but Jake Shields, who's another prominent anti-Semite and former MMA athlete, he gave an interview to some members of the Patriot Front. I haven't watched it because I have a low tolerance for cringe, but I need to see whether he gave a softball interview like Tucker gave to Nick Fuentes. Cyabra, a software suite aimed at detecting bots, detected that 24% of accounts pushing the false flag narrative after May 21st were bots. Per the report, Megatron Ron, another X account implicated as a foreign actor, has borrowed from Iran state media reporting word for word as recently as June 12th. Megatron Ron. So you're naming yourself after the leader of the Decepticons. Nice. And I'll stop here. You can read the report for yourself. It isn't perfect, but it raises serious, well-documented concerns. Circumstantial evidence points to foreign actors using the groypers as a vehicle to splinter the MAGA movement. God bless and stay frosty. Robert Barnes comments on this and says, Fuentes works for the feds. And Data Republican responded saying, I was wondering when I read this of his involvement in January 6th and how he escaped arrest despite inciting occupation. Nicholas Fuentes, a far-right activist among pro-Trump protesters who gathered outside the U.S. Capitol before rioters broke into the building, organized a November 11th Stop the Steal rally in Michigan. Fuentes joined protesters on the steps of the Capitol and celebrated the temporary disruption of Congress, affirming President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Supporters wearing merchandise for Fuentes' political commentary show, America First, appeared in videos and images taken inside the Capitol. I say that we should not leave this Capitol until Donald Trump is inaugurated president, Fuentes said Wednesday. We, the American people, will not let this fraudulent election go forward one more step. So, there's that. Now, let's go through my compilation of groyperism and takedowns of groyperism. Green Brain Naptime, who is now one of my favorite accounts on X, says the Jew-hating crowd, which includes Islamists, benefited the most from Charlie Kirk's assassination. Chew on that for a bit, because yeah, they really rose to prominence after Charlie Kirk was taken out. And here he says, but Israel's the problem. And he's responding to Max, who's another great account that I just discovered in this whole saga. The extent of Qatar's influence operation is staggering. Qatar has 31 ferret registrants in the United States, with 22 based in Washington, D.C., a 71% concentration, the highest of any major lobbying country. Since 2016, Qatar has spent nearly $250 million on 88 lobbying and PR firms, logging 627 in-person political meetings from 2021 through 2025, more than any other country. Its total U.S. footprint is $93.7 billion, including $30 billion in business investments, $29 billion in weapons purchases, $20 billion in energy projects, $8 billion in AI Al Udeid Air Base, and $6.3 billion in higher education. Qatar is the single largest foreign funder of U.S. universities at $6.3 billion. Well, that explains a lot. The DC-based Georgetown has received $1.1 billion since 2005. Qatari influence also permeates DC media and real estate. Al Jazeera holds 136 congressional press credentials versus 82 for the New York Times, and Qatari Zayar owns a 2 million square foot city center DC project under Sharia rules. $93.7 billion footprint. It's got a pie graph. Lobbying is just beginning. According to the Free Press, Qatar's overall U.S. footprint adds up to $93.7 billion, broken down like this: business investments, here, weapons purchases, energy plants and export facilities, Al Udeid Air Base, in gray, lobbying and PR, and colleges and universities. The fact that colleges and universities is a bigger piece of the pie than lobbying, that's telling. So the extent of Qatar's influence operation is staggering. Where did Qatar get this money? You want to bet it's some more money laundering from like places like China? I'm just spitballing there. I don't know for sure. Now, clandestine. We're going to see a lot of clandestine here. He says, finally, he says this on November 5th. Elon agrees that the groypers are a psyop to divide the right. Now the big dogs are stepping into the conversation. Elon recognized the problem. We are moving the needle. So, groypers are, the whole controversy around that was a cover story for the election fortification this week. Eyal Yacobi, another great account I'm starting to follow, says groypers were at Zoran Mamdani's election party, celebrating his win. If you ever needed more proof that this is a slap to divide the right and have the left win, here it is. And Elon says 100%. So I don't know who these two are, because I'm not part of that universe, but keep going. Carrie Smith, who's very popular on YouTube and who I follow here and there. She's been on Friday Night Text before. She says, it's a very woke thing indeed to pretend that words don't mean anything anymore, just like the left does, doesn't it? Isn't it? The left misused words like bigot and racist as if they have no meaning, on purpose even, to strip them of meaning. So that means those words have no meaning. So that means those words have no meaning now? It's amazing how they work in sync, woke left and woke right. And I first heard the term woke right from James Lindsay. I've only just started following James Lindsay this year. I know he's like a former left-wing agitator who supposedly saw the light and had his come to Jesus moment, but it remains to be seen how genuine he is. But he's been posting some pretty good stuff. Now, the Mississippi Patriot, another great account I'm starting to follow. So there is a silver lining to this. I'm following a lot. I've discovered a lot of great accounts on X who deserve their follow. Mississippi Patriot is responding to Ian Carroll, who I used to follow and take seriously until he unmasked. Ian Carroll says, you can't be this unintelligent, but you did used to work for American intelligence, right? Okay, he's talking about the 3006 round that killed Charlie Kirk. Everything I've heard, a lot of the critics say, hey, that's way too powerful to have left the wound that it did on Charlie. Mr. Patriot says, Ian, you're a fucking pizza delivery boy, soy boy fuckwit. I'm a hunter, and I personally pulled a full metal jacket out of a hog's spine. I've shot multiple animals with different calibers without having an exit wound. A deer's shoulder stopped a 6.5 Creedmoor last year. Their shoulders are made of nothing but cartilage. Shut the fuck up about shit you know nothing about. You're an absolute fucking clown. FYI, this is a 3006 wound from 90 yards on Saturday. It's the size of a quarter, and a human spine would definitely stop it. And he apparently shot a feral hog with this. So that's a 3006 exit wound in a hog. Pigs have pretty similar, body composition to humans. So I think his testimony is worth something. Clandestine again. Responding to Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat in Congress, says groypers peddle hate anti-Semitism, anti-Indian smears, anti-black lies, attacks on women. That kind of hate is antithetical to America. Today, Democratic victories in Virginia, New Jersey, and New York will show a different way. In America, for all building economic hope and national purpose. And Clandestine says, ding, 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 there you have it, folks. This right here proves that this entire thing is a left-wing op. To link MAGA to the groypers, and woke right. This is exactly why we must loudly reject these morons, because they are a liability, and them will use it against us. Well, at least use that as a cover story for their fortification. Max, and these posts are all over the place because I don't know how to rearrange them on Twitter index folders, but this is important information. Max says, the groyper tell is disingenuous questions where they very clearly do not care about the answer. 13 separate investigations confirmed that the USS Liberty incident was an accident. Even if it wasn't an accident, and it was 58 years ago. It would be like hating Japan for Pearl Harbor in 1999 if Pearl Harbor was an accident that Japan immediately apologized for and paid restitution for and wasn't followed by a war that took the lives of 400,000 Americans. USS Liberty truthers have never done a very good job of explaining why the USS Liberty is the only case of friendly fire in history that we're supposed to care about decades later. Thing is, we know why. So yeah, the USS Liberty, I mean, I don't have any of those videos pulled up, but Gavin McInnes totally took down Nick Fuentes on the topic of the Liberty. I mean, it was a friendly fire incident, and those things happen all the time, even today. Brian Cates, he's talking about the Chamber of Commerce here. I think this kind of goes to the point that we aren't just facing the groypers, we're facing the rhinos. It's not just that the good old boy Country Club Chamber of Commerce uniparty wing of the GOP sold out U.S. truck drivers by replacing them with far cheaper illegals. It's not just that. These are things your new slave class will do for you that American truck drivers just won't do. And he's responding to Eric Doherty, who says, holy crap. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem just announced the arrest of 46 illegal alien semi-truck drivers, and 82 illegals who drove box trucks and buses. These individuals come from California, Illinois, and New York. 223 illegal aliens have been arrested and taken off our roads. Of those, 146 of them are drivers. That includes 46 semi-truck drivers and another 82 of them that were either box truck, buses, moving vans, vehicles such as that. If you're here driving on our streets illegally, in our highways, you are endangering our citizens and your days are numbered. This is dangerous. It can literally kill Americans. Blue states don't follow CDL rules. So yeah, I have a CDL. I'm licensed to drive a bus or a box truck that doesn't require a stick shift, but it'd be very hard for me to get a job, that sort of job, with illegal aliens soaking them up. So there you have it. Continuing, here's cynical Publius again. If someone were to offer you $10 million to say you were MAGA and then spout a bunch of anti-Semitic neo-Nazi crap on a variety of social media platforms, and your benefactor promised that he would get you massive visibility on social media platforms and podcasts if you stuck to that message, would you accept? Because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened. We can see that with the bot accounts that Data Republican detailed. Clandestine again. Imagine that. Left-wing propagandists are amplifying the ongoing Israel obsession, and you'll never guess whose side they are on. They're now defending Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, etc. So yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and Rand Paul have all shown their true colors. So anyone who supports them is another tell that someone's woke right. Cenk is literally admitting that they're trying to manufacture MAGA, using Israel as a wedge. So he's responding to Cenk Uygur, the head honcho at Young Turks. Cenk says, pro-Israel forces are trying to force out Tucker Carlson from MAGA. They're also going after others, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and Representative Thomas Massey. Ben Shapiro attacked Tucker today. So it's deciding time, MAGA. America first or Israel first? The establishment is demanding you pick Israel. Well, we know what your opinion is worth, Cenk, because you're a leftist ogre. James Lindsay, who, as far as I know, coined the term woke right, has some very good analysis here. that I want to read. The groypers, especially, and the woke right more generally, are kind of queer theory, though not the kind you're probably used to. You think the idea of queer theory is LGBTQ+, and so the woke right and groypers are anti-queer theory, but that's just a surface level understanding. Queer is defined this way by David Halperin, who is recognized as the founding father of the school of thought. Queer, then, demarcates not a positivity, but a political positionality vis-a-vis the normative. A political positionality that is not restricted to lesbians and gay men, but is in fact available to anyone who is or feels marginalized because of his or her sexual practices. Okay, so it's not strictly gay or lesbian, it's alienated, marginalized. Halperin starts off this paragraph-length definition with the words, unlike gay identity, though, so we have to dig deeper. What kind of sexual practices is he talking about? Abnormal, transgressive ones. How can we tell? He explicitly tells us. Queer is by definition whatever is at odds with the normal and legitimate, the dominant. Groypers and the woke right are 100% this, though, not just necessarily about their sexual practices, or lack thereof. They feel marginalized because of their abnormal, transgressive beliefs and behaviors, just like queer theorists. They also act exactly the same. Performative identity, deliberate transgressive behaviors, activism designed to blur boundaries and undermine norms of respect and decency, provocation for the sake of deconstructive provocation, deliberate disruptiveness, and then all the mob-driven internet and social violence designed to cow people into silence, submission, or agreement. This is just the same queer theory in other clothes. Instead of drag queens, it's goose-stepping. But the point is the same. To tear down norms, to advance their power and agenda, and to humiliate and conquer their enemies. Their drag is trad, and it's a style with no actual substance, an identity without essence, as Halperin describes it. It's political positionality vis-a-vis the normal and legitimate in the pursuit of domination. You know what? That's how I knew Fuentes is a fraud. When I watched his, that one time I watched a whole live stream of his, because he was talking about religion, Christian religion, but he never said anything about spirituality, about the fruits of the Holy Spirit. I mean, he's a fucking Pharisee. He's stuck on religious dogma. When Christianity, Christ's message goes far beyond that. It's salvation through being born again. Christ, sacrifice for us on the cross. His defeating of death and renewal of all things. Where was I? Okay, queer theorists show up to be disruptive with their radical garbage politics and call it queering a space. Groypers show up to be disruptive with their radical garbage politics and call it groyping a space. Same exact thing. Both even cut deceptive, stunning, and brave videos of themselves doing it to try to make themselves look better than they actually were in reality. It's just another vein of queer theory. Same purposes, same methods, same tactics, same destructive trash. Well said. Okay. I think James Lindsay might be an example of a real liberal, not a phony liberal like a communist or a Democrat. A real liberal in the vein of Elon Musk and RFK Jr. and Joe Rogan and Russell Brand. Although I'm starting to wonder about Russell Brand, but I need to watch him more to figure that out. And we got real conservatives like Trump and Pete Hegseth and the rest of that team. Real conservatives and real liberals are friends. Phony conservatives, the right-wingers, and phony liberals, the leftists, are friends to each other, but enemies to the real. The divide is not between liberal and conservative. It's between real and phony. I will never get tired of saying that. I will never shut up about that. And here we got a fake conservative, Candace Owens. She's been on a tear over Charlie Kirk's assassination, and I know I need to analyze her podcast to really, figure out what she's saying and whether it's valid or not. But I don't know where to start because she's all over the place. She shares private text messages. She implicates all sorts of people, from the government to Charlie's widow to the DOJ to Israel. I don't know where to start with her. And maybe that's the point. Maybe that she's so convoluted that we cannot make an honest assessment of her content. But E.L. Jacobi has this to say about her. Candace Owens is finally saying the quiet part out loud. She doesn't care about voting, winning, or saving the country. A leftist literally murdered Charlie Kirk and bragged about it. This isn't based, it's betrayal. People like Candace are poison to MAGA. Wake up. And she's saying, not voting until we're learning the truth about who killed Charlie. Literally do not care how anyone feels about that. Not lifting one finger. So, yep. Insurrection Barbie. I've been following her for a while, and she's proven herself to be one of the good guys. Insurrection Barbie says, one of the first things Hitler did was command the churches in Germany to strip the Old Testament out of their Bible. The irony is not lost on me that people who platform Holocaust deniers also think they can throw away the entire Old Testament because apparently they are the arbiter of God's word and not God himself. You can't have the New Testament without the Old Testament. The Old Testament predicted Jesus as Messiah. That's how we know Jesus is the Messiah, because he was foretold by the prophets, and Jesus even had a transfiguration where he talked with Moses and Elijah. So the thing about Christian doctrine is God's plan to redeem humanity was to become a human himself. He had to be some ethnicity or another, and he had to live in some country or another. So he selected Abraham and Sarah to be the founders of a new nation, the Israelites. They would be the people from whom the Savior would come from, and first he needed to prepare them and teach them right from wrong, how to pray right, how to conduct themselves in a world that's corrupt and evil, and make the way for salvation. And he's not through with them yet. I mean, for one thing, the Jews today, they have done a very good job of preserving the scripture in its original Hebrew and making sure that things don't get lost in translation. So there's that. Jews and Christians are on the same side. We're on the same team. Islam is a perversion, but that's the topic for another day. Now, Brett Cooper. Brett Cooper has broken my heart. Now, Brett Cooper and Candace Owens have both been part of Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire organization, and they left over some gripe or another. And we're gonna talk more about Brett a little bit later. But King Kroganek says the reason airheads like Brett Cooper and Candace Owens fall off is because they never did the difficult work of deriving their own opinions from evidence and reason. Because their careers were developed by other people, handing them their talking points to regurgitate, they never had to learn how to think, only had to pander to an audience that wanted to hear members of demographics traditionally overrepresented by Democrats repeat their own opinions back at them. The cost of elevating such voices is that they ultimately end up disregarding truth in favor of clicks. So the lesson here is stop propping up people just because you think they're able to recruit others from the demographic into your movement. Thomas Sowell earned his pride of place in the conservative canon because of the quality of his ideas. If he was white, he would still be held in immense regard. Ditto with Christina Hoff Sommers, and Coleman Hughes, and Claire Lehman, and so on. These people had to do the hard work of learning how to think, which is why they'll always be assets to whatever political movement they're a part of. Stop giving charismatic airheads institutional support just because they're sufficiently photogenic and fast enough talkers to build engagement. They are destined to eventually become tumors. Razorfist again says, once you understand that this, in fact, is her revenge against Charlie Kirk and turning point, her behavior makes much more sense because she was part of Charlie Kirk's clique, and he turned her away because she's an airhead. And she responded to favorite trend ever, number one worldwide. So yeah, she's the number one. Candace Owens' podcast is number one worldwide without promotion. As if. We know those are bots. Clandestine again says, groypers are what the left claim MAGA is. The left claim Trump and his followers are racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, Nazis, etc. The groypers are openly all those things. Don't you get it? The groypers are a left-wing op to turn MAGA into the monster they said we are. Their mission is to get the groypers to be accepted by MAGA so they can then paint the entire MAGA movement as Jew-hating and racist, sexist morons. They aren't even hiding it anymore. Left-wing propagandists and the mainstream media are already propping Fuentes up and trying to make it seem like he is the future of MAGA. And this is a New York Times piece. Nick Fuentes was Charlie Kirk's bitter enemy. Now he's becoming his successor. Well, because the New York Times says so, we know it's bogus. But a lot of these groypers and woke right, influencers, they came into MAGA under false circumstance, under false pretenses. We're gonna talk about Tucker here. He was part of that, Rockbridge group or clique that in the WAPO article, but he's gone off the rails, and maybe we should have known all along he's a traitor. It's going to be really hard to see who genuinely turned away from their evil ways and who's always been a rat. Speaking more about engagement farming and bots and whatever, Awakened Outlaw says this. I just noticed there are certain large MAGA branded accounts, there are more of them connected with this group, all seem to be promoting each other, which leads me to believe they are run by the same person or company, likely as engagement farming outfits. The chances of them being authentic, or even giving a damn about MAGA, are pretty low, in my opinion. So he's pointing out Save America, Elephant Signal, Wake Up Patriot, Stand Up for Truth. So Jeffrey A. Tucker, posting on November 4th, says, I wrote an entire book in 2017 that mapped out the dark intellectual history of those who are now called groypers. But I missed the major sociological point that distorted my judgment. Namely, at the core of the ideology is a trolling strategy to appear more threatening and dangerous than they really are. They love hit pieces and aspire to be feared as powerful and dangerous, when in reality they're just internet blabsters. I only found out after my book came out that they are, of course, considered a great triumph and reveled in the high dudgeon of the book itself, tracing their worldview back to 1820. When one of them told me this, my blood ran cold with the sudden realization that I had done exactly what they wanted more than anything else. I had taken them seriously. Of course, mainstream commentators do not understand this either. Here's a good example. Okay, the New York Times piece. So there's that angle. I mean, that's possible. I mean, there is a possibility that Fuentes is just a modern day Howard Stern, before Howard Stern was replaced by a Disney animatron, but okay. I do have a clip bookmarked somewhere of Nick Fuentes on someone else's podcast interviewing, saying he had, in order to break containment, he had to be outrageous. So in order to get clicks and become famous, he had to be outrageous. That's a possibility. That could be another, smokescreen, though. I mean, Fuentes is the face, but there's a more sinister movement behind him. Awesome Jew points out some further evidence of bot goings on. 2,000 likes in just 4 minutes. Nick Fuentes' engagement is totally fake, and he's been caught red-handed. Next step, uncover who's behind these bots. This is going to be extremely humiliating for him. So he's got a screenshot of Nick responding to Elon Musk. Elon says 100%. He got 468 likes. Fuentes said, last year you spent Christmas shilling for H-1Bs and telling everyone who disagree to fuck with themselves in the face. Now GOP is getting crushed and you're blaming a live streamer. Put Americans first or keep losing. We don't give a fuck. So Nick got 2,000 likes in the post within 1 hour. No, within 4 minutes. That's okay. That's suspicious. He got 2,000 likes within 4 minutes. Look at this. Elon's post got 468 likes out of 27,000 impressions. Nick's post got 2,000 likes out of 6.4 thousand impressions. 27K, 6K. Yeah, that's suspicious. That doesn't look organic. Richard Bannon's War Room. Richard Barris. I'll just read the text here. Richard Barris. Bill Ackman just congratulated Marxist Mamdani and offered to help NYC. This is who the GOP donor class really is. Traitors who lick crumbs off Democrat tables while pretending to share your values. They eat well while you can't pay your rent. It's disgusting. So yeah, we've definitely got a traitor problem within the MAGA movement. And here's another example of members of Congress showing their true colors. Gunther Engelmann points out during this government shutdown, Senator Rand Paul just objected twice to Senator Kennedy's proposals that would not pay members of Congress during a shutdown. Paul says, I don't want to pay less people during a shutdown. I want to pay more. He wants to make a permanent payday for his fellow crooks. Unreal. So, yeah, Rand, you broke my heart. And now you're making me wonder about Ron Paul, your father. So back to Brett Cooper here, formerly of the Daily Wire, now independently. Okay, so Mikhail Olson says, what a surprise. Brett Cooper and her mom engaged in witchcraft. She's not conservative. I don't care how hard people want to gaslight me about it. So yeah. Yeah, because spirits of the dead are not really spirits of the dead. They're demons in disguise. Here's another mask off moment. Clandestine says, wow, Megyn Kelly's mask just came all the way off. Megyn Kelly of Fox News and now of podcast fame. She's pretending she doesn't know about the heinous allegations Candace Owens made about Charles' assassination and is trying to whitewash the insanity. Ben Shapiro was 100% accurate here. Let's watch a video and then read the rest of the post. So Ben Shapiro has his own issues. Like he was big on the COVID vaccine, and he wasn't a big supporter of Trump during the initial campaign in 2015 and 2016. So I got my issues with him. But in this case, he's right. So now, back to Clandestine's post here. Megyn Kelly's mask just came all the way off. She's pretending she doesn't know about the heinous allegations Candace Owens made about Charlie's assassination and is trying to whitewash the insanity. And we're gonna get to Candace Owens' allegations in another post here because someone else has done the legwork for us. Shapiro is 100% correct here. Megyn is a fraud and scumbag. She has plenty of time to shame those of us who are calling out Candace Owens, but claims she doesn't have the time to know about what Candace has been saying. What? Megyn has been slamming us, but doesn't even know why she's protecting Tucker, Candace, Fuentes, etc. Megyn just proved she's either uneducated about her own takes, or she's running cover from the woke right. Disgusting behavior. She's playing dumb. Now, if I don't know something about this topic, I'll find someone who does. Now, I'm starting to think that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson is one of the good guys. Let's watch this. Okay. There's a big debate right now on Twitter about cancellation versus platforming. I mean, we saw Tucker grill Ted Cruz and then softball Nick Fuentes. There's a difference in behavior. There's a pattern of behavior, and at some point, I'm not gonna do it on this live stream, but I need to watch that interview between Jake Shields and that guy from Patriot Front because I need to see whether Shields gives the Patriot Front guy softballs or if he actually grills him and interrogates him and asks him hard questions because you gotta have discernment for that. That's another thing. That's another example of the Mott and Bailey fallacy. Platforming is one thing. Free speech is another thing. Promotion is one thing. Cancellation is another thing. You can't all mix them up and jumble and confuse the issue. Pressed by National Review Online about whether Carlson's views and voice in particular have a place in the conservative movement, following his decision to give Fuentes the opportunity to air his noxious views, Johnson said, conservatives have an obligation to speak up about anti-Semitism wherever it is. So, and then goes with the quote that we just heard. There's that. So here's Miss Patriot. We already read this Dina Lash tweet, but now about podcast hosts defending Nazi tweaks and rather than interviewing candidates for office. Here's Miss Patriot's take on it. This is a very good point. The woke right podcast circuit spent the last 11 months fluffing each other and building an anti-Israel echo chamber instead of actually talking about American politics. The demoralization campaign definitely didn't help us win this week. But as I said, it's also not surprising Democrats won blue seats. Either way, the number one issue for me has been to expose these people as fast as possible so we can get back to doing what's important for this country. Because if we don't address this problem, what we saw last night, we will see in 2026 and 2028. Stop calling for unity with garbage and just throw it out the fucking tent. It's not that hard. Now, back to Green Beret nap time. He's been duking out with Evan Kilgore, a woke right account, over bots. Evan has over double my followers, but got ratioed on his own post because his bots only boost posts that attack the evil Jews. His entire online persona is a fraud. He couldn't make it at TPUSA, and he got dumped by a Jewish girl when she found out how lame he was. So naturally, he turned to the Jew hate crowd, full of other worthless insults like himself. Never stop making fun of people like Evan. So I don't know if I'll read that because I'm getting kind of bored with it. But the Republican. Okay, we read this thread at the beginning. Matt Gaetz. I was defending Matt Gaetz because he was a big Trump supporter and he was getting accused of relations with a 17-year-old girl. And I thought, and at the time I was saying, if you're gonna slander Matt Gaetz of pedophilia, that says a lot about where your head's at. But I'm starting to wonder, is that a real genuine avenue of attack? Is that a real vulnerability of MAGA? Green Beret nap time is responding to Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz says, the Israeli military lawyers who told the Israeli government that they could be charged with war crimes are obviously anti-Semitic. So Matt Gaetz has been turning against Israel. And Green Beret nap time says, Matt is either willfully ignorant or flat out lying when he discusses the Israeli military lawyers. The lawyers were not condemning Israel's existence or motives. They are fulfilling their duty to ensure that military actions remain within the boundaries of international law. Their warnings were illegal, not moral or political, and meant to protect Israel soldiers and government from real exposure to prosecution. Our JAGs do the same thing exact thing at the command levels. Of course, Matt would know that if he had done anything in his life remotely resembling military service. I bet he was serious when his lawyers talked to him about the perils of sending money to underage girls he had spent time with privately, though. Okay. Eric Carlson, we read Joe Lang on Eric Carlson. We read this already about the American Party. Okay, here's where we get to the brass tacks about Candace Owens here. Clandestine again says, holy shit, a CNN correspondent interviewed Candace Owens about her allegations about Charlie Kirk's murder and completely exposes her. Candace has absolutely zero evidence of her claims. These Israel-obsessed clickbait influencers are a liability. So let's listen to this. It's probably worth it. Anonymous sources! If the Russian collusion hoax didn't alert you to the perils of anonymous sources, then you're lost. Now, going back to July here, we're reaching the end of this collection here because a lot of this consummation it started with the Epstein files issue in May, then it ramped up in June and July over the airstrikes against Iran. Trump confirms that the war with Iran was controlled. Iran's response was theatrical. It was all for show. They were coordinating with Trump because Trump has leverage on them. The deal was already made. We were never at risk of World War III or forever war. The situation was secure. Yeah, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Alex Jones both ate triple helpings of crow over the World War III. So if you remember, let's listen to this. The Patriots under control, as X22 report always says. But okay, we're winding down here. Let's listen to this. Nathan Livingstone says it's incredible how right Douglas Murray was on the Joe Rogan podcast back in April. Weren't exactly what we are seeing now with Fuentes being embraced on the right. Look, what happens at the portion of the right everywhere and all this. Actually, let's listen to the clip. Nice. Now, this is going back to the whole Epstein issue, and I want to bring this up again because a lot of this started with over Epstein, and I still stand with Pam Bondi because you think you're ready for the Epstein files, but you're not. Not until your livelihood and your retirement and your personal safety is extricated from Wall Street and the government. But Awaken Outlaw says something can be real and fake simultaneously. A document, for example. That said, it's absolutely plausible that a leaked document could be created and shared internally for the express purpose that could be leaked to the fake news media. If true, that would mean Caroline Leavitt will be telling the truth about the veracity of the document, while the information contained therein could be fake. Okay. I kind of wonder if that was bait for the rats to come out, flushing out the traitors. Now, Jordan Henry, this is recently, this is this week, November 4th, says, while you're watching the unfortunate election outcomes tonight, groypers and Nick Fuentes are spending their night strategizing on how to infiltrate local Republican organizations and campaigns. You won't have a clue how you lost your party and your country before it's too late. Well, thank goodness we have X. One of Nick's one of the legs of his stool, his platform is he thinks Israel needs America's help to defend itself. Maybe Israel's deep state needs our money and help to defend itself, but the real Israel has God to help them. So there you go. I mean, we saw that during the missile attacks in the Iron Oops, Closet. But yeah, Israel's fine. And back to the whole Epstein issue here. The amount of people who still can't get past Bongino and Cash saying the evidence given to them suggests Epstein killed himself is astounding. What part of being bound by ethics protocols don't you understand? They can't, in their current roles, publicly speculate or theorize on anything that isn't supported by evidence that they've been given. This isn't the answer you want to hear, but it's the truth. Okay, so when it comes to Cash and Bongino, the FBI, it's good, it's natural and logical to doubt the FBI after Mar-a-Lago. There are sleeper agents in the FBI. There are bad actors in the FBI. It's rational to think that the FBI is crooked, even with Cash and Bongino in charge of it, even with Pam Bondi in charge of it. You need to understand what a massive chess game Trump and his team are playing with the deep state embedded in the government. They need to figure out who is a traitor and who is a patriot without tipping off the enemy. They can set traps. They can offer bait. They can shine a light on people. They can make the traitors expose themselves. And I think we're dealing with this whole, groyper and woke right drama. More people are, coming out of the woodwork. More termites are coming out of the woodwork. So we can't have a rest until we completely clean out the corruption in the government, until we eliminate the deep state. Part of that is waking people up, waking up the people, waking up the public, so we can call them out. Q said they will not be able to walk down the street safely. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what Q said. We are part of the plan. We, the people. Trust the plan doesn't mean don't let some elites take care of it. Trust the plan means trust that we're being given the information and ammunition that we need to take care of this ourselves. So we're gonna wrap this up pretty soon, but I want to pay some more bills here because I don't want to. I need to. So let's have another commercial break. 80% of Americans injected a dangerous drug that they were told would protect them from COVID-19. Instead of protection, millions have suffered blood clots, altered personalities, reproductive dysfunction, and more. If you're like me, you're outraged by what was done to you. You don't have to admit you were wrong. You can admit you were lied to by your doctor, your employer, even your church, by every institution that should have had your back. The good news is there are remedies waiting to be rolled out. President Trump, Vice President Vance, Elon Musk, Dan Bongino have taken the COVID shot, and they're working confidently to make America great again. They know something. Until the world is ready, preparations are being made by true conscientious medical professionals. They're building alternatives to the medical establishment that betrayed us. One of those alternatives is the Wellness Company, and I'm honored to be one of their referral partners. They provide multiple supplements to help detox from the COVID shots. They also provide medical kits with ivermectin, the antiviral and anti-parasite medication that Big Pharma dreads. Follow the Wellness Company and their research until we're made whole and on to the new health paradigm. Click on the link and use my promo code for 10% off your purchase. Reclaim your health. So yeah, the Wellness Company. I mean, we haven't forgotten COVID and and the COVID bioweapon, what a horror that was. A lot of the woke right are gleefully making fun of people who were bullied into the COVID shot as if trauma-based conditioning and abuse and coercion doesn't happen. So go watch my video on AI proving that abuse happens at scale. It's got the Good Will Hunting meme as the cover image. But I want to close out with reading this long post by Joel Richardson. He's another one of those accounts who I've discovered in this whole groyper drama, and I'm sure he's one of the good guys too, until information comes out otherwise. But he says, if someone is a 30-year-old Caucasian male right now, they literally have no memory of a world that was not highly hostile to them. They've been hammered since birth by their Marxist-educated teachers. They are the source of all the world's problems. They will soon be replaced, reinforced by Biden's reckless open border policy, during which time 10 million illegals from all over the world walked into the U.S. They feel abandoned by their leaders. Then there's the near universal sense among the same age bracket that owning a home is nearly impossible. Shucks, my health insurance premium has just increased by 1/3 to a total of $33,600 this year. That's if we never even go to a doctor. The stories of Muslim rape gangs in the UK are anything but exaggerated. Again, leaders did nothing as hundreds of thousands of British girls were systematically raped, sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism. Parts of the UK and the US look like Karachi. Videos of radical Muslim imams in Times Square victoriously shouting about taking over the country and entering every home create a deep sense of foreboding and existential dread. Now, New York City, one of the largest economies in the world, was just given over to a 34-year-old Marxist Islamist mayor as jubilant self-hating liberals celebrate the end of whiteness. So they, like we humans usually do, react. They flock to the raving rants of agitators who point to men like Adolf Hitler as the solution. One report claims that 40% of young Republicans in New York City are groypers, those who generally want to foment a revolution to destroy the American Constitution and remake America into some form of white Christian fascist fantasy land that resembles Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, the exhausting pendulum of liberal democracy swings back and forth, each time seemingly closer to breaking entirely from its hinge. Like the sons of Issachar, pastors, politicians, and thought leaders must discern the moment we are in, or they will also fade into irrelevance. The impotence of a positive and encouraging the Caleb gospel is on display. As the world around us crumbles, as things once reliable, country, a home, a family, a future all slip away, Anything less than of true and substantial hope is going to fail. Vague, nebulous messages about a future existence someday in the sky are not sufficient. Everything that can be shaken is being shaken. When nations rage, foundations crumble, there remains an immovable anchor. It is the gospel of the kingdom that all of the prophets have proclaimed from ancient times. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure, from Hebrews 6:19. Our hope is not in the stability of governments or the predictability of economies. It is only found in Jesus, the King and Messiah of Israel, will rule the nations from Zion, crushing the unrighteous like grapes under his feet, and establishing true justice to the poor and oppressed throughout the earth. He will deliver the needy when they cry out, the poor also, and him that has no helper. His resurrection is a guarantee that all creation will one day be made new. For now, he remains in heaven, but he, as the Christian faith has always proclaimed, is coming back. Heaven must receive him until the time comes for God to restore everything, as he promised long ago through his holy prophets. Acts 3:21. That restoration, the renewal of all things, is the message that we have been given. So let's proclaim it. The day is coming when justice will roll down like waters, when every tear will be wiped away, and even death itself will die. In that day, the knowledge of God will cover the earth, as the waters presently cover the seas. Habakkuk 2:14. So, a genuine Christian who's trying to advance and claim territory for the kingdom of God, they're not necessarily going to argue with you or try to prove one point or another or some sort of fine point on scripture or some kind of reason or another. They're going to tell you their story. They're going to tell you their story about how Christ and the Father and the Holy Spirit transformed them, got them out of trouble, delivered them, healed them, anything. How the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit improved their lives and themselves. That's called a witness. The first Christians were witnesses to Jesus' acts on earth. They were witnesses to his resurrection. Some of them had seen him genuinely die on the cross, and they saw him alive later on. That's what it means to witness, and that's what it means to make disciples of the world. So I can attest that, I used to be so insecure. I used to be bullied. I used to be, a schlep. I used to be neurotic. When I became born again, when the Holy Spirit came into me, I was transformed. I was made more confident. I became an entrepreneur. I became a businessman. That's a struggle right now because, because we're under oppression of the deep state. But I'm not suicidal anymore. I'm not, abusing anymore. I've been getting into God's word, and I've had the Holy Spirit, empower me in the name of Jesus Christ, and I'm a lot better off than I used to be. And I want that for you. I don't think this is the place or the right program for me to tell my story or give my witness, but I've given it to other people. And anyone who is genuine Christian has been born again. There's full of scripture, including in the Old Testament, where God's Spirit comes into a person and they become a superhero. I mean, if you want a good example, go read David and Goliath, 1 Samuel chapter 17. David declared it wasn't really him who was going to defeat Goliath. It was going to be God acting through him. God acts through us. So that's how we make the world better and prepare it for Christ's second coming. So I'm going to leave it at that. We got great people working in science and medicine and technology, genuinely trying to make the world better as God meant to. We just got keep seeking the kingdom of God in order to make things right, do things the right way. So I'll let you go. That's how I'm going to close this. So I'm going to let you go. This is Nate Houseman letting you know more than ever, it's okay to stand up for yourself. Over and out.